The time is now 12:01, and you're tuning to the Mid Morning Talk with me, Fazila Isaac, on Salam Media. I know I keep reminding you this, but we love the engagement that we receive from you all. Engage with us on our Facebook pages as well as over WhatsApp, and you can live stream with us, www.salammedia.com. We did say before the break we will be speaking to Islamic Careline Shuhaida Adam on Mental Health Awareness Month. Assalamu alaikum, Shuhaida. Welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's wonderful to be here. It's a wonderful topic to talk about. And I really hope that
Alhamdulillah.
I'll help with our viewers and listeners to just educate a little bit about what the month is about. There's so much to it. If I really unpack it, we're going to be here for a long time. So I'll just try to be also brief about this whole month.
Inshallah. So tell us, what is the significance of Mental Health Awareness Month? Let's start there.
Okay, so usually practitioners in the field, we use this month to create awareness about what is mental health. Because if you ask people often, what is mental health exactly, we're not sure exactly how to answer that, right? Why is it so important to know about mental health? So we want to educate people about what exactly does mental health consist of? Why is it important to know about it? What happens when people are struggling with mental health? So what are some of the common difficulties around your mental health? What is actual disorders? What is an actual disorder? What are some things to notice, to observe in yourself? And if you notice certain signs and symptoms, what should you worry about? Where do you go for help? People who are struggling with mental health, what rights do they have? People who have diagnosed mental health disorders, what exactly are their rights? What services are available to them? How do we break stigma? So how do we include people with mental health difficulties in our communities? How do we keep engaging with them in families? What's some of the right ways to engage with people? What should we avoid? What is harmful to behave with? What is harmful to perpetrate to people with mental health conditions? So it's all about breaking the silence around mental health. It's about creating awareness. And bringing people together to address this problem, and what can we even do to stop it? What are some of the factors that are within our control that we can address? Because we recognize also people who are struggling with mental health difficulties, they often stay silent, especially with a lot of our more sort of traditional communities that don't recognize mental health problems. So they expect people who are struggling to either stay silent and suffer in silence, not seek help, or they often prescribe very harmful practices as treatment, so to say, towards certain mental health conditions that actually just make things worse. For example, some people who experience things like your schizophrenia, your personality disorders, oftentimes they are just assaulted by their family members because they are thought to be possessed by spirits, or they are just misbehaving. So they are assaulted, and we've had plenty of cases in our country alone where people who have been assaulted because of their mental health, where it's been fatal. They've actually been beaten to death, or they've been killed because of what has happened. And we are not treating it very well. We're not addressing the understanding of what's going on in our communities. So more so even addressing people who don't have that much access to educational awareness about mental health. So I hope that sort of just clears it up a little bit, and we can really unpack it as we go along.
There's something disturbing, the fact that people are getting killed because of speaking on their diagnosis. That is horrible. You're going through one problem, and for someone to firstly minimize the problem that you're going through, and then still want to invade your life and invade your space, and then still take your life, it is horrible, absolutely horrible. I mean, I understand, okay, having the awareness for stuff, or for this, but how can things like that then be avoided? Is awareness then just enough, or is there more that can be done?
Well, we think there's quite a few things that people can do. One is, of course, creating the awareness to recognize that mental health is oftentimes out of people's control. So people with your more serious disorders, or conditions that they perhaps are born with, it's out of their control. Perhaps it's a developmental disorder, etc. So it's not anything that they can control. So we want people to understand exactly what is this person going through. Second of all, the supportive services that are available. Oftentimes, we find that abuse occurs towards people with mental health conditions. It occurs because families or the caregiver is completely overwhelmed and they don't know what to do about this. So, for example, your people with your more behavior disorders, let's say somebody who's got something called oppositional defiance disorder, where they are guaranteed to be defiant, they are constantly getting into trouble. So the caregiver does not know what to do, and the caregiver is often on the receiving end of some difficult behavior as well. Some people with mental health conditions, they can become violent when their needs are not met. And if we don't understand what's going on, and if we don't have enough support services, things can get out of control very quickly. So caregivers can become very overwhelmed, and they then may try to control the situation through abuse, which of course it's not helpful to anybody, and it can be harmful to the perpetrator and the person on the receiving end of the abuse. So it's services that we can offer. We need to make it known to people who are caring for somebody with a disorder. What can we do to help them? Just to lessen the difficulty around the care and the being overwhelmed. And then, of course, educating people about rights. People in South Africa with mental health conditions, they have rights that they are entitled to. These mechanisms that are supposed to be protecting people in our communities. And if they are harming themselves, certain people who are with certain disorders, if they are actually harming themselves, also what can then be done to assist them legally also, so that we can put mechanisms in place to protect them from harming themselves, from hurting others, or even just from, for example, somebody who is wasting their resources, they are going on a binge, they are spending a lot, etc., etc. So from harming the family, from protecting their interests. So there's legal mechanisms that's supposed to be in place. So that is why also it's not just for the people who are doing treatment and therapy, it's actually involving a lot of people, even your SATs, your people who are in safety, security, protection. Oftentimes, they are also on the ground witnessing all of the actual impact of what's going on. They get called to in these difficult situations. They get called to protect family members. They get called to go and find somebody who has gone wandering off, or somebody who is not being cared for at home, who can't care for themselves. They get called, and they are sometimes, our first responders to a situation. So it's also up to them to very much either educate themselves or to become a part of educating the community about what people are going through for their mental health.
Yeah. And what kind of activities can people engage in during this month?
Okay, so educational campaigns are a little bit straightforward, where we talk about just disseminating information. So sharing information to people, very straightforward information. What is mental health? What are some of the common issues that people are facing? Who are the people who would experience things like this? Who are people who are more susceptible to maybe mental health disorders or developing mental health conditions? What can people do if they are going through a difficult time? We just have to share the facts with them. What we also can do then is reaching out to people who are struggling with their mental health, reaching out to them directly. Doing activities that will include them in the community, helping them perhaps engage with the caregivers, helping them engage with the people around them, highlighting also what resources are available for them. So if, for example, there are work opportunities, different training opportunities, if there are colleges, if there are uh, what government grants are available for them, so what resources are available to help people who are actually impacted by this. Looking at sharing with people about what type of treatments are there, because not one type of treatment may not necessarily work for all types of disorders. So there's different approaches, there's different treatments. Encouraging people to become more involved in the field, so we can reach out to students, or your matric learners, your high school learners, getting involved in the field, sensitizing people to the experiences that they may go through when working with people with mental health difficulties. For example, your medical students, your dentist, even somebody working in a retail store. If you have a customer who is struggling with mental health conditions, how do you assist them? How do you help them go further? Your general caregivers, even people who work in our homes. If, for example, you are caring for an elderly person who is struggling with mental health, for example, Alzheimer's, how is the caregiver at home, the home health, the nannies, etc., how can they be sensitized to what people are going through? And then we also want to advocate for people's rights during this month. We highlight how we have to engage with stakeholders. So, for example, your decision makers in communities. your local leadership. What can they do to make things easier for people who are caring for people with mental health difficulties, or even for people themselves? Even things like as simple as making wheelchair accessibility for people who don't have mobility. They are struggling with whatever reason for no mobility, etc. What is there for them? Support groups. What can the government do to support people who are trying initiatives, who are presenting support services to the community? How can they come on board? And then, what laws may necessarily need to be changed? What laws can be sort of improved on to help people? What access do people have to justice services, for example? If you know of a person who is being ill-treated, who is being abused, who's not being cared for, how can the law step in and assist people? So there's quite a few things we need to do. And then one of the main things, of course, is fundraisers, because we always are in need of funds to present services, to help promote research also. So the more we understand about conditions, the easier it is for us to really work with it and to work around it, and for people to understand what it is about when we have actual credible research to say that this is something tangible, this is what will happen, and it's not something we're sort of making up or based on random things. If there's credible research to say that this is why a certain thing is happening, if you have a certain condition, for example, this is what you can expect. This kind of a treatment is, backed by research that it would be more effective in being implemented with this type of a condition, etc. So we try to raise funds also around research and implementation. What extra support services we have, what can we need to fund, etc. That kind of a thing. So there's a lot to the month. There's a lot to pack into 1 month. But inshallah, we're just hoping that we'll make a difference some way, somehow, and hopefully even though we're using this month to create a lot of awareness, etc., around that, it means, of course, that the work does carry on for the rest of the 11 months throughout, over the year as we carry on.
Because we can't actually it's something that is so prevalent and it happens all of the time. So it's not something that we can say October is the month and then we just concentrate in October, and then come November, we are done and dusted, It cannot be something like that. You spoke quite a bit of times on the rights of people with mental health issues. We're going to take a quick short break, but I'd like for us to speak about that when we get back. What are some of the rights of people? Because we understand as normal humans, yes, we all have rights, but to be aware of the rights of people who are suffering from mental illness, I don't think that is something that many people are aware of. So I think when we get back, you can unpack on that, inshallah.
No, definitely. Inshallah, we'll do that.
Stay tuned.
Joining hands, Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Devastating floods in Pakistan have washed away villages, claimed the lives of more than 1,000 people, damaged nearly 1 million homes, and left over 33 million people in desperate need of help. As the catastrophe unfolds, Islamic Relief is on the ground, reaching people with life-saving aid. Our team are working tirelessly to deliver food and shelter. Your support is urgently needed now to help save more lives. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists, with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities, conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Thousands of Syrian Palestinian refugees and Lebanese children do not have access to education. Aman means safety. and it is a school that provides formal education from kindergarten to grade 9. Africa Muslims Agency aims to provide 650 children with education that will change the trajectory of their lives and their families' lives. Fulfill your intention by fulfilling their dreams. Donate 16,000 Rand per child or any amount. Go to africamuslimsagency.co.za or call us on 011 834 8685. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
For a long time, we've lived in a centralized world where institutions held the all-important data and confirmed all transactions. Those times are over. Welcome to Libertas Group, a blockchain development company boasting an ecosystem that continually redefines the way we do business. Our blockchain is decentralized, making it immune to hacking or alteration, putting the power back in your hands with no middleman so you can focus on the growth of your business. Libertas, the simplest investment choice you'll make.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media, humanitarian journalism.
The time is now 12:17, and you're back with me, Fazila Isaac, on the mid-morning talk on Salam Media. Before the break, we were speaking to Shuhaida Adam of Islamic Careline, speaking on Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, Shuhaida, we did touch on the rights of people going through mental health issues. What are some of these rights?
Okay, so in South Africa, all persons, whether you have whatever you are going through, are subject to the Constitution, and the Constitution guarantees certain fundamental rights, right? So the right to dignity, human dignity, the right to access services if needed, and whatever is enshrined in the Constitution also has to be underpinned by the specific. There's a specific act that is dealing with mental health. So it's called the Mental Health Care Act. So it covers the rights of people who are requiring mental health care services and those who are implementing the services. So basically, it also covers who would fall under this. So being diagnosed with a specific mental health disorder, there's a process around it. So not everybody who is going through poor mental health will necessarily require mental health care and will necessarily in terms of this act. So there is a process to be sort of diagnosed with this and to fall under this act. And also there's our other acts that exist in South Africa, for example, your gender-based, your GBV Act, your Substance Use Act, because all of those are recognized also as contributing towards mental health. So people's rights are sort of, it's meant to be protected within many other acts as well. And also the services that they require, it is also legislated and governed by those acts. So if we look at specifically the Mental Health Care Act, it looks specifically at people who require sort of more like your institutionalized services or your more formalized services, for example, health, going to the hospital for medication, etc. So these acts talk about how, first and foremost, the respect and dignity towards the patient at all times is paramount. So we may not treat people in a way that undermines them in any way, that impinges on their dignity, impinges on their right to, for example, confidentiality, their right to privacy, their right to access services as well. It also protects them from exploitation. So if a person has, no matter what their mental health condition is, they need to be protected from exploitation. Because oftentimes we think that people with your severe learning disabilities, etc., then we can, and we have cases where people utilize them rather for physical work, and even though they are under the age of 18, they may not actually be formally employed full-time. We often find that people with mental health conditions, they are not paid, so they are basically working under slavery conditions. They are not paid for their time, they are not treated well, they're expected to work through, at all hours also, so their rights are not being protected. So the Act is meant to protect them from exploitation. Then also, what are they entitled to? They're entitled to representation. They are entitled to health care. Now, some people with certain severe mental health disorders, they may not have the capacity to make decisions for themselves. So this act also allows for, if they cannot make the decisions for themselves, who's going to be the person who has their best interests at heart? It's supposed to be, of course, the caregivers who are around them, so close family members. However, if there are no people around them who have their best interests at heart, if, for example, they were already being exploited by family members, the state will then have to take on this responsibility. So they will then be allocated to a representative of the state. There's, in your different provinces, then you have different your mental health review boards. So the state is meant to then see to this person's interests. Where are they staying? How are they being looked after? They are then a responsibility of the state. We won't necessarily say they are patient of the state, but they are the responsibility of the state. They may not necessarily be a hospital patient, but they do require services. They need a grant, so they are given there's different types of grants that are available for them. Then how is that grant being managed? So there needs to be certain checks and balances in there. So the Act provides for all of this. How are their needs being met? What services do they require? And how is it going to be provided to them? Now, of course, this is South African. We do understand our country has vast inequality in terms of services. Your more rural areas may not necessarily have easy access to services. Also, your more affluent people obviously have more access to services they can pay for, and people with less affluence and less financial resources, they don't have that much access to services. So while we talk about what our acts are saying and what they're supposed to be providing, we find, of course, in practice that there's a lot of challenges for people to access these services. So hopefully that is where, again, our awareness campaigns come in, our activists who will then advocate for the rights of the mental health patients and people who are struggling with mental health, who can advocate to government for providing certain specific services that they are responsible for, or how can we as civil society step in and support these services, because ultimately at the end of the day we are all living together in a society. And if we don't help people who are struggling, it's going to come back to us, even though we're off to be able to support your family and provide them with all the services. But at the end of the day, if you are keeping all the problems out there, and the problems are building out there, and you're not becoming a part and you're not providing towards a solution in some way, you don't have to be the one to go out there and shout out loud. But if you're not assisting to help build our communities, at the end of the day, it's going to be coming closer and closer. The problems are going to be coming closer and closer, and they will come to you. Our country, we have to work together. You cannot escape it. If you're going to be living in this country, eventually, if you are not going to be part of the solution, the problems are going to come to you. And we're seeing it in our cases. We're seeing it at Islamic Careline. It will be there. So it is in your own interest also to support initiatives that are going to uplift society, because you are part of this community. So ultimately, when the community thrives, you will thrive. If you are thriving alone and your community is not thriving, it's not sustainable. It's not going to last long. So then that is also part of what we are talking about through this month, helping people to share how can they become a part of the solution also, just by supporting mental health services or supporting people who are going through this difficulty, even if it's somebody who doesn't have a diagnosed mental health condition. Things like depression, people are susceptible to depression, and that we talk about mental health, that forms part of mental health. Mental health, if we actually break it up, what exactly is it? We're looking at the emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So emotion, psychological, it's looking a little bit more at internal. Social well-being affects the social world around us, how we interact with people. And if our mental health is not okay, we're going to struggle with how we think, how we feel, and how we act in life. And how we act is also impacts how we engage with others. So if you're not struggling with your mental health, the person next to you may be, and it will impact you because they may then take it out on you. They will not be able to engage with you, or when they cannot cope with whatever life is throwing at them because they're struggling with the coping skills, the problem might then come to you. And you will then have to maybe pick up the pieces. You will have to sort of bail them out of whatever difficulty they're going through. So it really does help everybody to become more sensitized about how we can just play for a very basic type of support, even not asking for too much sometimes, a very basic type of support. And sometimes you may not even see this, but you may be thrown into a situation where you have to help somebody, and it can even be life and death, life or death. Because we talk about suicide awareness and people who struggle with mental health, they can be, they may reach a point where suicide is an option for them, and they come to you, and you are actually their only hope. So being thrown into that deep end and not really having an idea of what do I do, because now somebody is speaking to
Yes.
them, decide what do I do, rather have an idea of what should you do beforehand before you are thrown in that situation. So as you can
Mm.
see, there's just so much we can unpack here. But one thing Islamic Careline is doing, is we're reaching out to young people. We're having 2 more webinars this month, one for teenagers and one for parents. And it's going to just uncover topics relating to mental health. So, from a parent's perspective, how can you support your child's mental health and your own mental health as a parent? Because mental health is affected also by the relationships you engage in. So your relationship with your child can actually impact your well-being. Your child's well-being is going to be impacted by their relationship with you as well. So we're having these webinars, but we'll share a bit more details with Salam Media, perhaps in our next show, because I know our time is almost up. So we'll have to share more around that. And then also we are just engaging with people about mental health and how can they support loved ones, or how can they actually get involved. So if anyone would like further information, or you want to continue the conversation with me, I'd love to carry on with it. You can contact Islamic at 011 373 8080 or 078 727 1334.
That was fantastic. You know, it's always enlightening speaking to you, learning about all of these things, because quite a bit of what you said today, I didn't even know about, especially when it's, speaking on the different type of rights that they have, also speaking on, the ways that we can create awareness. Because all we know, we kind of just sit and we wait for people to bring up events and to bring up things. And, like, okay, they'll send out pamphlets, etc., etc. And we would see, okay, there's, an event here or whatever it is, but we don't realize that we can also play a role in all of this. And it's important that we actually play a role in all of this. So it was quite enlightening. Alhamdulillah. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Inshallah. We'll speak again.
Take care. Shukran. Remember us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ameen. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Shuhaida Adam of Islamic Careline, highlighting the importance of the Mental Health Awareness Month. Very, very important that we all play our role in this, because as Shuhaida said, it does or will find a way to affect each and every one of us. The time is now 12:29. We're going to take a quick ad break. Once we come back, we are going to be speaking to Lisa, and she's from Action in Autism. Something interesting that we are going to be speaking about. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.